Hare Krishna. This is the audio narration of the book Kṛṣṇa, the Reservoir of Pleasure and Other Essays by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda. Chapter 4. The Perfect Person. Kṛṣṇa consciousness is a very important movement meant to bring all living entities back to their original consciousness. Just as there are many mental hospitals like Bellevue established for the purpose of bringing a crazy man back to his original consciousness, similarly, the purpose of Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement is to bring all crazy men back to their original consciousness. Anyone who is not Kṛṣṇa conscious may be understood to be more or less crazy. There was a murder case in India in which a murderer pleaded that he had become mad and therefore did not know what he did. So, in order to test him to see whether he was actually a lunatic at that time, the expert civil psychiatrist was brought to examine him. The doctor gave his opinion, saying that he had studied many cases and that all patients with whom he had come in contact were more or less crazy, and the court could excuse him on those grounds if it desired. In a Bengali poem, a great Vaishnava poet has written, "When a man becomes haunted by ghosts, he speaks only nonsense." Similarly, anyone who is under the influence of the material nature is haunted, and whatever he speaks is nonsense. Although one is a great philosopher or a great scientist, if he is haunted by the ghost of Maya, illusion, whatever he theorizes and whatever he speaks is more or less nonsense. The intent of the Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement is to bring such a man back to his original consciousness, which is Kṛṣṇa consciousness, clear consciousness. When water falls from the clouds, it is like distilled water without contamination, but as soon as it touches the ground, it becomes muddy and colored. Similarly, we are spirit soul, part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa, and therefore our original constitutional position is as pure as God's. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse 7, it is stated, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke. The living entities are part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa. As a fragment of gold is gold, so we are minute particles of God's body and are therefore qualitatively as good as God. The chemical composition of God's body and our body, not the material body but our spiritual body, is the same, and thus ours is as good as God's, for the chemical composition is one. But as rainwater falls down on the ground, so we come in contact with this material world, the material nature, which is manipulated by the material energy of Kṛṣṇa. When we speak of nature, it must be inquired, whose nature? God's nature. Nature is not active independently. Such a concept is foolish. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that material nature is not independent. A foolish man sees a machine and thinks that it is working automatically, but actually it is not. There is a driver. Although we sometimes cannot see the driver behind the machine due to our defective vision. There are electronic machines working very wonderfully, but behind the electronics, there must be a scientist who pushes the button. This is very simple to understand. Since a machine is matter, it cannot work on its own accord, but must work under spiritual direction. A tape recorder works, but it works under the direction of a living entity, a human being. The machine is complete, but unless it is manipulated by a spirit soul, it cannot work. Similarly, we should take it for granted that the cosmic manifestation of nature is a great machine, but that behind this material nature there is God, Kṛṣṇa. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10, Maya Dhyakshena Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. All material nature is acting under my direction and superintendence. There are two kinds of entities: the moving, such as human beings, animals, and ants, and the non moving, such as trees. Krishna says that material nature, which controls both kinds of entities, is acting under his direction. There is a supreme control. Modern civilization does not understand that due to lack of knowledge, so our Krishna consciousness movement is trying to enlighten people. People are all crazy because they are conducted by the influence of the three modes of material nature. They are not in their normal condition. There are so many universities, especially in the United States, and so many departments of knowledge. Why aren't they discussing these points? Where is the department for this knowledge? In 1968, when I went to Boston and was invited to speak at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, my first question was, where is the technological department which is investigating the difference between a dead man and a living man? When a dead man dies, something is lost. Where is the technology to replace it? Why do the scientists not try for it? Because this is a very difficult subject, they set it aside. They are busily engaged in technology of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. This is animal technology. Animals are also trying their best to eat nicely, to have a nice sex life, to sleep, and to defend. What is the difference between man's knowledge and the animal's knowledge? Man's knowledge should be developed to explore the technology that deals with the difference between a living man and a dead man, a living body and a dead body. That spiritual knowledge was taught by Krishna in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was talking to Krishna as a friend. Of course, whatever he was saying was right, but it was right only to a certain point. Beyond that point, there are other subject matters of knowledge which are called adokshaja because our direct perception of material knowledge fails to approach them. We have many powerful microscopes to see what we cannot see with our limited vision, but there is no microscope that can show us the soul within the body. But nevertheless, the soul is there. The Bhagavad Gita informs us that within the body there is a proprietor. I am the proprietor of my body, and others are the proprietors of their bodies. I say my hand, I don't say I hand. Therefore, since it is my hand, I am different from this hand. When I say my book, this indicates that the book is different from me. Similarly, it is my table, my eye, my leg, my this, my that. But where am I? Searching out the answer to this question is meditation. One asks, where am I? What am I? We cannot search out the answers to such questions by material effort. Therefore, all the universities are setting this aside. It is a very difficult subject. Engineers are very proud of creating the horseless carriage. Formerly, horses were drawing carriages, but now there are cars. So the scientists are very proud. We have invented horseless carriages and wingless birds. They say they can invent imitation wings for the airplane, but when they can invent a soulless body, then they will deserve credit. Such an invention cannot be because no machine can work without a soul. Even computers need trained men to handle them. Similarly, we should understand that this great machine, known as the cosmic manifestation or material nature, is manipulated by a supreme spirit, that is Krishna. Scientists are searching for the ultimate cause or the ultimate controller of this material nature and are putting forth different theories and propositions. But our means of knowledge is very easy and perfect because we are hearing from the perfect person, Kṛṣṇa. Because Kṛṣṇa says so, we immediately know that the cosmic machine of which Earth is a part is working so nicely and wonderfully because behind this machine is a driver, Kṛṣṇa. Exactly as behind any machine, there is a machine driver, behind this big machine of material nature, there is Kṛṣṇa. Our process of knowledge is very easy. Krishna's book, the Bhagavad Gita, is the book of knowledge that is given by a perfect person. One may argue that although we have accepted him as a perfect person, others may not. But he is the perfect person on the evidence of many authorities. It is not by our whims that we accept Kṛṣṇa as perfect. No, there are many Vedic authorities like Vedavyasa, the author of all Vedic literature. The treasure house of knowledge is contained in the Vedas, and their author, Vedavyasa, accepts Kṛṣṇa as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Vyasadev's spiritual master Brahma accepts Kṛṣṇa as the Supreme Person. Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Kṛṣṇa. The Supreme Controller is Kṛṣṇa. No one can say that he is without a controller. That is not possible. Everyone, no matter how big an officer he is, has a controller over his head. But Kṛṣṇa has no controller, therefore he is God. He is the controller of everyone, but he has no controller. There are so many so-called gods nowadays. Gods have become very cheap. They are especially imported from India. People in other countries are fortunate that gods are not manufactured there. But in India, gods are manufactured practically every day. One of my disciples recently told me that a god was coming to Los Angeles and that people were requested to receive him. Kṛṣṇa is not that kind of god. I mentioned in my introduction to Kṛṣṇa book that Kṛṣṇa is not the type of god manufactured in a mystic factory. No, he is God. He was not made God, but he is God. Behind the gigantic material nature, the cosmic manifestation, there is God, Kṛṣṇa, and he is accepted by all authorities. We must accept the knowledge which is accepted by authorities. For education, we go to a teacher or to a school or learn from our father and mother. They are all authorities, and our nature is to learn from them. In our childhood, we asked, Father, what is this? Father would say, this is a pen, these are spectacles, or this is a table. So a child learns from his father and mother. This is a table, these are spectacles, this is a pen, this is my sister, this is my brother, etc. Similarly, if we get information from an authority, and if the authority is not a cheater, then our knowledge is perfect. The father and mother never cheat when the son inquires from them, and they give exact and correct information. If we get the right information from the right person, that is perfect knowledge. If we want to reach the conclusion of speculation, that is imperfect. The inductive process will never become perfect. It will always remain imperfect. Since we get information from the perfect person, Kṛṣṇa, whatever we speak is perfect. I don't say anything which is not spoken by Kṛṣṇa or by authorities who have accepted Kṛṣṇa. That is called disciplic succession. That is Kṛṣṇa consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 2, Kṛṣṇa recommends this process of knowledge. Evam parampara praptam imam rajasayo vidho. Formerly, knowledge was passed down by great saintly kings who were authorities. Nowadays, the government or president is the authority. Formerly, however, those authorities or kings were rishis, great learned scholars and devotees, not ordinary men. That system of government was very nice. One talented and well-trained person as the head of the government could very peacefully execute the governmental functions. There are many instances in Vedic civilization of the perfection of such kings. Dhruv Maharaj is such an example. He went to the forest to search out God, and by practice of severe penance and austerities, he found God within 6 months. How? He was a 5-year-old boy, a king's son with a very delicate body, but according to the direction of his spiritual master Narada, he went alone to the forest. The first month there he simply ate some fruits and vegetables every 3 days. For the next 3 months he drank a little water every 6 days. For the next month he would inhale some air every 12 days. For 6 whole months he stood on one leg and executed these austerities, and at the end of 6 months God became manifest before him eye to eye. If we practice austerities, it will be possible for us also to see God eye to eye. This is perfection of life. The Kṛṣṇa consciousness movement is based on austerity, but it is not very difficult. We recommend that our students do not have illicit sex. We don't stop sex, but we regulate it. We don't stop eating, but we regulate it. We eat Kṛṣṇa prasadam, food first offered to Kṛṣṇa. We don't say no eating, but no meat eating. What is the difficulty? Kṛṣṇa prasad is made of many varieties of nicely cooked fruits and vegetables, so there is no difficulty. No illicit sex means don't be like cats and dogs. Be married and have one wife or one husband and be satisfied. We must regulate ourselves and must undergo austerities, although we cannot undergo such severe types of austerities as Dhruva Maharaj. In these days, it is impossible to imitate Dhruva Maharaj, but the method we are prescribing is possible. If one takes to these principles, he will make advancement in spiritual consciousness, Kṛṣṇa consciousness. As one makes advancement in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, he becomes perfect in knowledge. What is the use of becoming a scientist or a philosopher who cannot say what his next life will be? These students of Kṛṣṇa consciousness can very easily say what their next life is, what God is, what we are, and what our relationship with God is. Their knowledge is perfect because they are reading perfect books of knowledge such as the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. This is our process. It is very easy and anyone can adopt it and make his life perfect. If someone says, I am not educated, I cannot read books, still there is the possibility that he can perfect his life. He can simply chant Hare Krishna. Krishna has given us a tongue and 2 ears, and we may be surprised to know that Krishna is realized through the tongue, not through the eyes. After the tongue, the other senses follow, but the tongue is the chief. We have to control the tongue. How does one control it? Simply chant Hare Krishna and take Kṛṣṇa prasada. One cannot understand Krishna by sensual perception or by speculation. It is not possible. For Krishna is so great that he is not within our sensual range, but he can be understood by surrender. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 66, Krishna therefore recommends this process. Sarva dharma parityaja mam ekam sharanam raja. Give up all other processes of religion and simply surrender unto me. Our disease is that we are rebellious. We don't want to accept authority. Yet, although we say that we don't want authority, nature is so strong that it forces authority upon us. We are forced to accept the authority of nature by our senses. To say that we are independent is nonsense. It is foolish. We are under authority, but still we say we don't want authority. This is called Maya, illusion. We do, however, have a certain independence. We can choose to be under the authority of our senses or the authority of Krishna. The best and the ultimate authority is Krishna, for he is our eternal well-wisher and he always speaks for our benefit. Since we have to accept some authority, why not accept his? Simply by hearing his glories from the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and by chanting his names, Hare Kṛṣṇa, we can swiftly perfect our lives. Thus we come to the end of the 4th chapter. Śrila Prabhupāda ki jai. Hare Kṛṣṇa.